Hi golfers, thanks for your interest in the Perfectstroke Premium Putting Training Aid. My name is Mark Officer, the designer, and if you're watching this video, that means that you're interested in improving your putting stroke. So the Perfectstroke will improve things such as aim at address, face angle at impact, stroke path direction, face angle relative to path, impact spot, timing, a whole range of things, as well as, really importantly, it's going to improve your consistency. It will also help you in dealing with all different types of putts. So you need to learn to treat every putt as though it's straight. So that means that on a breaking right to left putt, you're not stroking up the slope, you're simply aiming for the selected aim point and making exactly the same stroke mechanics as you would if it was a straight putt. So I'd now like to show you how to put together the Perfectstroke Premium Putting Training Aid, and I'll also demonstrate how to use it in a number of different ways. So we'll take the components out of the travel bag that you're going to receive when you order the Perfectstroke Premium. So first of all, we've got two carbon fibre plain rails. There's one with a gloss finish and another one with a matte finish, and we've got some markings on that for length of backswing, length of through swing. So they get attached to the base brackets. So this is the base bracket, the longer one here, and also attached in this setup in the bag is the slot bracket, which attaches to the base bracket and enables the alignment strip to set above the ball and above the putter head, so you can ensure that you've got very accurate putter face alignment at address. So that's one of the alignment strips. The second alignment strip with a different design there for you to very accurately aim the putter face. Base bracket, slot bracket. We've got a couple of cap screws and wing nuts to hold the slot bracket in position, and then we've got our base. So this is reflective so that you can easily see your shoulder alignment in the address position. Also on the base bracket is a little cap screw which enables you to stand the putter up when you are not using it, when you are in two plane mode. So we'll show you the basic setup with only one plane rail. So this is base bracket being attached to the base. We've got cap screws, socket head cap screws that are in position in the base already when you get it, so you can just finger tighten all of the componentry in the makeup of the Perfectstroke Premium Aid. You don't need any tools to put any of this together. So here's a very basic setup, and this can be good for juniors or for beginners because there's not quite so much going on. It's fairly simple in that we're just using the base itself to provide the reflection for the shoulders to ensure that they're square at address, and we're using one carbon fibre plain rail attached to the top of the base bracket, and this is then going to provide a suspended plane mechanism for the shaft to rest on while you make your stroke. So the shaft should stay in contact with this rail the entire time, and what you're going to do when practicing in this situation is you're going to have the shaft resting sometimes on the outside of the rail and then sometimes on the inside of the rail. You can check how far back and how far through you're going based on the markings on the plane rail. For a start, we're just trying to learn to set up somewhere near parallel with the base, so that feet should be the same distance away from the base. We're trying to get our shoulders aligned square so we can see that in the reflective base, and we're trying to get this putter face to be an extension of the white line here in the centre of the base. And if we are actually set up parallel to the target line, then I can use that somewhat as a way of aiming the putter face. So we're just going to run that shaft along that rail and hopefully keep it in contact the whole time. You notice that if you go outside on the backswing, the shaft is going to come off the rail. If you're applying too much pressure and you go inside, you're actually going to move the training aid a little bit, and vice versa on the follow through. If you knock the training aid to the left, then you're applying too much pressure and doing a cut stroke on the forward stroke. So just really lightly running that shaft along the rail. Now we'll set up for the standard position for the Perfectstroke Putting Aid. So that's where we get the slot bracket and we put it on the top of the base bracket here, so that the cap screw goes through from this side, the wing nut goes on the inside part here, and we just tighten that up, put the other one on at the same time. And then it's a good idea to put the alignment strip on next. So I'm choosing to put the alignment strip with the space in the center of it. So that's where, if you've got a line on your putter, you're going to see the line on your putter basically make that a continuous line. So you will ensure you've got to get the putter face square at address. So the alignment strip goes underneath the slot bracket and your cap screw is going on from above. So now we can tighten that up, and it can't, we can fix it in position. We can also move it to the appropriate position for the lie angle of a putter or the player's posture, to ensure that we've got number one, the target line, and then hopefully you're going to have your eyes over the ball or very near over the ball at address. So we can precisely set that up so that it's absolutely parallel to the base, and it's also going to be then parallel to the carbon fibre rail. So we can now attach that. So this goes on the lower hole, and it goes on the inside part here. So I'm just using the thumb screw to tighten that up. We've got the Perfectstroke brand there showing on the right hand end. So we've got our lines for backswing length and through swing length visible. You can also turn it upside down so that you don't see those lines if you don't want quite so much going on when you're doing your practice. Okay, so that's standard setup for Perfectstroke Putting Aid. When you first start doing some practice with the Perfectstroke standard putting aid, what you should be doing is really lightly resting that shaft on the plane rail. This is after you've established exactly where the aim strip needs to be for your lie angle putter and for your posture position, in order to have this exactly on the target line, directly over the target line. Hopefully then you're also going to have your eyes somewhere near directly over the target line as well, so that then when you look down at your putter, if you've got a line on your putter at all in the sweet spot, you're going to be able to see that in this case with this aim strip, that the line on your putter becomes an extension of the aim strip line. So then you can accurately get that putter face aimed squarely at address. Then you're going to need to start off doing some practice strokes along the plane rail as lightly as you possibly can. Then you need to be doing some practice on the underneath side of the plane rail, at least in your practice strokes. So really lightly running the shaft along that rail again, and sometimes you can do continuous strokes like I'm doing here, and sometimes do individual strokes. So you're in a start position in your posture. Hopefully you've got a fairly straight line between your arms and your shaft here. You've got your eyes over the ball, you've got your feet parallel, and we're in a reasonably straight back position. And then we've got some connection between arms and body. And then you move that putter back and through with arms and shoulders, right? No wrist action. And that's going to mean that if the shaft remains on the plane rail, the head itself is going to swing up and inside a little bit. So you're going to see any line on your putter in the sweet spot just come fractionally inside on the backstroke, return back to the same position it started at address, and then come inside again on the forward stroke. So lots of practice strokes. either side of the plane rail, then you can start hitting some putts. And when you start hitting putts, you don't necessarily have to aim at a target. Just get used to rolling the ball out of the device itself. But if you are aiming at a target, it's nice if the ball actually hits the target, whether or not that's a hole or a fake cup or a glass, whatever it is. Hopefully you're going to be able to see if the ball starts on line and stays on line the whole time, depending on how straight your surface is. So the base of the Perfectstroke actually has some small holes where you can put a tee in to anchor when you're out on the practice putting green. So there's actually 3 small anchor holes there, and this is going to mean you can at least keep the training aid in exactly the same position all the time when you're putting, but you need to make sure that you're running that shaft really lightly along the plane rail. If you're a player that has a tendency of going outside on the backswing, I would definitely recommend doing lots of practice with the shaft on the outside of the rail. Vice versa, if you're someone who goes to the inside on the backswing, I would set it up with the alignment strip as well, so that you're resting the shaft on the underneath side of the rail. So then you're going to feel like the putt is more in front of you. If you go inside, the shaft's actually going to come off the rail. So you definitely want to be running the shaft on either side of that rail, at least in practice strokes, if not mixing it up, and then really lightly running the shaft along the rail when you actually hit your putts. In this setup, I've actually got the aim strip moved a little bit along on the slot bracket, so that in the address position I don't have the shaft touching the plane rail. So I'm using all the benefits of the aim strip here, but in the stroke I don't want to have the putter shaft touch the plane rail. So if you notice that you touch the rail on the backstroke, you know you've gone to the inside, touch it on the forward stroke, you've gone outside in on the forward stroke, so you're cutting across. So this is the next step up. I just felt like it touched the plane rail on the backstroke, going slightly inside, but we know the biggest influence on direction is actually face angle, so I must have come back with a pretty good face angle at impact. So this is really important practice to be able to do these strokes without touching the plane rail. Again, I just touched a tiny bit on the backstroke, which is my tendency. Next step is remove the plane rail altogether. I think this is one of the best ways to practice on the practice putting green. So here I've removed the plane rail and I'm just using the aim strip and the shoulder alignment in the reflection there to give me my feedback on whether or not I'm set up correctly. Then hopefully I can make a stroke where the shaft stays on plane. Putt head swing slightly inside, backstroke slightly inside, forward stroke, face remains square to the path, and we return the putter face back to square at impact. And then we're going to be able to start the ball on line and hopefully make the putt, or at least, you know, give ourselves the best chance of making the putt. Maybe a bit outside on the backstroke there, I felt that. So this is going to give you a great deal of confidence when you can get on the practice putting green and make putt after putt, knowing that you're set up correctly, knowing that you've got good eye position, good shoulder alignment, face angle good at address, you can start the ball on line, then you're going to give yourself a great chance of being able to hold putts out on the golf course. Fraction in the toe, that's perfect. You can see how important face angle at impact is on being able to get that ball to start on line. One of the huge advantages of practicing with the Perfectstroke standard or premium putting training aid is that you can easily adapt to breaking putts. So you're making the same stroke mechanics with any of the putts that you're practicing with this training tool, but because we've got this alignment strip in position, it's just a matter of aiming the device directly at your selected target line. In this case I'm aiming about 6 degrees to the right, or just under a foot to the right, and then I can make my exact same stroke mechanics as I would as though it was a straight putt. This also teaches you how much putts actually break when you're using this training tool. So you can see if the ball starts on line or if it starts right or left. So now, setting up in two plane mode, what we do is we're going to use two of the carbon fibre rails. So this gloss finish one we're putting on this side of the base bracket. So we're just tightening that up, fixing that into position. In a second we'll be removing the socket head cap screw and the wing nut. So once that lower carbon fibre rail is in position, now we can remove the cap screw and wing nuts, which is used for the standard setup, and then we're going to replace in that position the other carbon fibre rails. So now we can finish tightening those off, those thumb screws on either carbon fibre rail, and now you're set up for two plane mode. So when we're set up with the two plane mode in the Perfectstroke Premium Putting Aid, we want a situation where the shaft actually goes in between these two plane rails. So you can ease the head in usually at the end of one part of the Perfectstroke, so that you don't get too many scratches on the gloss carbon fibre rail. So once you've gotten the shaft in position, we want to have a situation where when the putter is in the ideal position, the shaft is in between the two plane rails, the lie angle is perfectly flat, and the sweet spot on the putter, the middle of the putter, is directly underneath the aim strip. So then we can actually start off by doing practice strokes on either of the plane rails. So this is the setup for when you're practicing at home or in your office or hotel room. You're going to be doing a lot of practice strokes, so it's get yourself into good parallel alignments with feet, knees, hips, arms and shoulders. Rest the putter shaft on the lower rail, and then just to really lightly run that shaft back and forwards along that rail. Maybe it's continuous strokes, maybe it's individual strokes, hold the finish. You may also be referencing how far back and how far through that stroke goes from the lines on the upper carbon fibre plane rail. So after you've done a few strokes on the lower rail, then you're going to do some strokes on the upper rail. So that means you've only got to move the shaft some 5 or so millimetres this way, and then we're resting on the upper rail. So now we can do some strokes on that. So it should feel exactly the same whether or not you're on the lower rail or the upper rail. Your stroke should feel exactly the same. We don't want to be exerting any pressure on the training aid itself. Hopefully this is going to help us develop an on-plane stroke. Then after we've done upper rail practice and the lower rail practice, maybe it's continuous, maybe individuals, then we find the gap in between the two plane rails. So that should also mean we can see the sweet spot of the putter is directly underneath the aim strip. So the shaft is now in between the plane rails. We can now do a practice stroke, and hopefully we don't touch anything. Okay, success there. So if you're someone that goes inside on the backswing, obviously you're going to hit the lower rail. If you go outside, you're going to hit the upper rail. You're going to know that, you're going to see it and you're going to feel it. And you'll also hear a different sound with the two different carbon fibre plane rails. So some practice strokes in between the two plane rails. I just made contact there. Now you're not going to be able to stay in position for too long, so this is where I'd recommend every once in a while, after a minute or so, you're going to take a rest, so then you can rest your putter head into the cap screw that's in the base of the Perfectstroke, and then you can stand the putter up and leave it there and have a bit of a rest. Come back after a while and do a little bit more practice. So a lot of the time your development of your stroke is going to come from doing practice strokes, not so much hitting a lot of putts when you're in this mode. You can hit putts, and hopefully that's going to be when you don't make contact with either of the plane rails. Okay, so then you would go ahead and do more practice strokes. This is the key to being able to do these strokes inside of the two plane rails with not making any contact. Is you need to have done a lot of practice strokes, very lightly running the shaft along that rail before you can hope to do it in an actual stroke where you're hitting the ball. Just hit the lower rail on the backstroke. So that is my tendency to go a little bit to the inside on the backswing. So for me, it's probably more important to do practice on the upper rail, on the inside of the upper rail, then the putter head or putter shaft feels like it's a little bit more in front of me on the backswing. Must make sure when you're training with a perfect stroke that you are looking at the target line or the target as well as the references from the training aid itself. This is going to help you make that transition from training to on-course play. There is one other way that I can suggest that you set up the Perfectstroke Premium Putting Training Aid, and that's where you remove the slot brackets and the aim strip. So that means that the gap in between the two plane rails becomes much smaller, much more challenging to be able to make that stroke in between those rails without touching.